Imagine I offered you a salary of $1 million a year, every year for the next 40 years. You'd probably never worry about money again. The house, the cars, travel wherever you wanted. And after 4 decades of earning one of the highest salaries on earth, you'd have earned $40 million. That is an extraordinary amount of money. But here's the strange part. You wouldn't even be 5% of the way to $1 billion. So if $1 million salary doesn't get you there, where do billion-dollar fortunes actually come from? Because the answer exposes one of the biggest misconceptions most of us carry around about wealth. And it matters even if becoming a billionaire isn't remotely your goal. The richest people in the world generally didn't get there because of what somebody paid them. They got there because of what they owned. Let's make it concrete. Picture 2 people working at the same company. David is an elite executive. He earns $1 million a year. Across the room is Anna, one of the founders. Anna pays herself $150,000. If you asked most people which one was getting richer faster, the obvious answer seems like David. His salary is almost 7 times higher. But David owns almost none of the company. Anna owns 20% of it, and the company is currently worth $10 million. Her stake is worth $2 million. Now the company starts to grow. $10 million becomes $50 million. $50 million becomes $200 million. $200 million becomes $1 billion. Anna's salary barely changes the whole time. But that 20% stake? At $1 billion valuation, it's theoretically worth $200 million. Before dilution, taxes, or any of the real-world complexity that comes with actually converting equity into cash. David may have earned several million over that period. Anna participated in the growth of the entire business. Same office, completely different financial outcome. That's the core of what most people get wrong about wealth. We understand money through income because that's how almost all of us experience it. Work, get paid, repeat. Income is additive. But ownership operates on a different logic. If you own part of a productive asset, your financial outcome can be tied to the value that asset generates, not just the hours you personally work. A business can serve 10 customers or 10 million. A piece of software can be sold 1 million times without anyone making it again. Salary pays you for participating in the machine. Equity gives you a claim on the machine itself. It's why, unlike David, most billionaires don't collect a regular paycheck at all. Ownership, not salary, is what built almost every one of those fortunes. And that leads naturally to something that confuses a lot of people when they see the headlines. You've probably read something like, "Billionaire loses $8 billion in a single day." And you picture someone opening their banking app to discover a catastrophic balance. That's not what happened. A single trading day can move a billionaire up or down by billions of dollars because their wealth isn't sitting in a checking account. It's sitting in shares. Imagine someone owns 100 million shares. Yesterday, those shares traded at $50. Today, they trade at 60. Their stake has increased on paper by $1 billion, but nobody deposited anything. The market simply assigned a higher price to something they already owned. And the reverse can happen tomorrow. There is no one true net worth. There is only an estimate, and it changes with the market. That's not billionaire trivia. That's genuinely useful financial literacy because it changes how you read those headlines. Now, at this point, someone could easily reach the conclusion: ownership is always better. Get equity, skip the salary. But stop right there. Ownership creates extraordinary fortunes, partly because it creates extraordinary concentration of risk. Go back to Anna. The company goes from 10 million to 100 million to 1 billion. Wonderful. But it can also go from 1 billion to 300 million to bankrupt. Her ownership participates in the downside just as much as the upside. David collected his salary regardless of how the company eventually performed. Ownership isn't free money. It's exposure to the upside and to the failure. And because so much of a fortune can sit in 1 or 2 companies, any snapshot of it is temporary by nature. This also explains something that puzzles people. The richest fortunes are often heavily concentrated in a single asset: a founder's company, a large equity position. Conventional advice tells ordinary investors to diversify, so this feels contradictory. But there's no real contradiction once you separate two problems. Diversification protects wealth you already have. Concentrated ownership is what creates enormous wealth in the first place, while simultaneously creating enormous risk. The strategy that builds a fortune isn't necessarily the strategy that should protect one. Now let's bring this back to normal life, because most people aren't building billion-dollar companies, and that's fine. The lesson isn't quit your job or put everything into one stock. Most people focus on one number. How much do I earn? Income matters. A higher income makes saving and investing easier. But there's a second number that deserves just as much attention. How much of what I earn becomes something I own? Two people can both earn $100,000 a year. One spends $95,000 and owns very little. The other lives on $70,000 and consistently uses the difference to buy productive assets. Shares, equity, something with economic value that can grow independently of their next paycheck. Same salary, very different trajectory over time. If you've watched the video on why looking rich keeps you poor, this is the other side of that same coin. Now go back to where we started. The person earning $1 million a year for 40 years. We treated the salary as the path to wealth. But imagine instead that this person consistently turned part of that income into ownership of productive assets. Now the equation changes completely. The salary isn't the fortune. It's the fuel for acquiring ownership. And once those assets begin producing their own returns, growth starts building on previous growth. We tend to look at billionaires and see enormous amounts of money. But that's usually the wrong frame. Look at any list of the world's richest people and you'll see extreme wealth is built through ownership, compounding, and long-term reinvestment. And when you look closely, you're almost never looking at someone who simply got paid a lot. You're looking at ownership valued at an enormous amount of money. And you don't need to want $1 billion for that distinction to matter, because the same principle operates at every scale below it. Your income determines what flows through your hands. Ownership determines how much of the economic world you're gradually building a claim on. So maybe the better question isn't, how much money do I make? Maybe it's, what am I slowly becoming an owner of? Income can make you comfortable. Ownership is what gives money the opportunity to compound beyond your next paycheck.